There is a specific kind of exhaustion that nobody talks about. It's not the exhaustion of doing too much. It's the exhaustion of being around people for too long. Not bad people, not stressful situations, just people, conversation, presence, the simple act of being perceived. And when it gets bad enough, you start doing something that looks strange from the outside. You cancel plans you were looking forward to. You leave parties early. Good parties. You sit in your car for 10 minutes before going inside, just to have a moment that belongs only to you. You don't tell people this, because how do you explain that you love them and also need to be away from them? That their presence, which you genuinely enjoy, is also something your nervous system has to recover from. You've probably spent years wondering if something is wrong with you. There isn't. But there is something fascinating happening in your brain that most people never understand, including you. We have a word for this, introversion. But that word has become so flattened by popular culture that it no longer captures what's actually happening. Introversion is not shyness, it's not social anxiety, it's not a preference for being alone over being with people. At its neurological core, introversion is about one thing, how your brain processes stimulation. In the 1960s, psychologist Hans Eysenck proposed that introverted brains have a higher baseline level of cortical arousal, meaning they are, at rest, already more activated than extroverted brains. This means that the same social environment that gives an extrovert just enough stimulation to feel alive gives an introvert too much. Their system crosses the threshold faster, reaches saturation sooner, and needs more time to return to baseline. You're not antisocial. Your nervous system is just running at a higher idle. But there's a layer beneath even this that almost nobody talks about, and it explains something the introversion label never quite captured. Why even after a perfectly good day alone, some people still don't feel restored. Why solitude isn't always enough. Why the exhaustion sometimes comes from inside as much as outside. That layer is called self-complexity, and understanding it might be the most useful thing you learn today. 1. Your brain doesn't just recharge in silence, it reconstructs. Most people think of time alone as a battery charge. You plug in, you refill, you go back out. But research in cognitive neuroscience suggests that something more interesting is happening. When you're alone, truly alone, without inputs competing for your attention, your brain activates what's called the default mode network. This is a system of interconnected brain regions that become most active precisely when you stop focusing on the external world. For a long time, neuroscientists thought the default mode network was just the brain idling, background noise. They were wrong. The default mode network is where you process your own identity, where you integrate experiences, make sense of your emotions, and consolidate who you are in relation to what's happened to you. In other words, when you need time alone to feel like yourself, you are being neurologically accurate. That time alone is literally when the reconstruction of yourself happens. The people who need this the most aren't weak. They're running a more intensive internal process than most people realize. 2. The cost of being perceived. Here's the part that will feel uncomfortably specific. When you're around other people, even people you love, even in low-stakes situations, a part of your brain is always running a social monitoring process. Am I coming across right? Did that land the way I meant it? What are they thinking? What do they need from me right now? For some people, this process runs quietly in the background, manageable, almost invisible. For others, particularly those high in what psychologists call self-monitoring, this process is loud, constant, and consuming. It doesn't switch off between conversations. It doesn't rest during silences. It runs for as long as you're in the presence of another person who might be forming an opinion of you. This is why you can spend an evening with your closest friends, people you trust completely, and still come home feeling hollowed out. It wasn't the interaction that drained you, it was the monitoring, the continuous, involuntary work of being witnessed. Alone, that process stops. Nobody is forming an opinion of you. Nobody needs anything from you. You exist without being observed. And for a brain that has been monitoring itself all day, That silence is not emptiness, it is relief. 3. What you're actually doing when you're doing nothing. People who need significant time alone are often accused by others and by themselves of being unproductive, of wasting time, of not engaging enough with life. This is one of the most persistent and damaging misunderstandings in modern culture. When you are sitting quietly, when you are staring out of a window, when you are taking a slow walk without a podcast in your ears, your brain is not idle. It's doing some of its most important work. The default mode network, active precisely in these moments, is associated with creative insight, emotional processing, empathy, future planning, and what psychologists call autobiographical reasoning. The ongoing process of building a coherent narrative of who you are and where you're going. Studies on creative professionals consistently find that their best ideas don't come from focused work. They come during unstructured, low stimulation time, the shower, the walk, the quiet morning before anyone else wakes up. You are not doing nothing. You are doing the work that cannot be done any other way. 4. The guilt that comes with it. If you're someone who needs significant solitude, you almost certainly carry guilt about it. Guilt for canceling, guilt for leaving early, guilt for the genuine relief you feel when plans fall through, guilt for needing something that people around you don't seem to need or don't seem to admit they need. The guilt has a source. We live in a culture that has equated availability with love, busyness with value, and social engagement with mental health. To need time alone is, in this framework, to be somehow deficient, to love people less, to contribute less, to be less. But the research tells us a different story. A 2021 study from the University of Rochester found that people who regularly engaged in chosen solitude, time alone that was actively chosen rather than imposed, reported higher levels of emotional regulation, lower levels of reactivity and conflict, and greater satisfaction in their relationships, not despite their time alone, because of it. The solitude wasn't a withdrawal from their relationships, it was what made those relationships sustainable. You are not taking from the people you love when you protect your alone time, you are protecting your capacity to show up for them. 5. The difference between solitude and hiding. There is one distinction worth making carefully, because it matters. Solitude that restores you is chosen, purposeful, and temporary. You go in, you process, you reconstruct, you come back, more present, more yourself, more capable of genuine connection. Isolation that depletes you is driven by avoidance, by fear, by the belief that the world outside is too much, that people will always disappoint, that it's safer to stay in. The first is a biological need, the second is a wound. Most people who need solitude are practicing the first, but it's worth asking yourself, honestly, when you close the door, are you filling up, or are you hiding from something that deserves your attention? Not as judgment, as curiosity, because the same temperament that makes solitude restorative can, under the wrong conditions, make isolation feel like safety when it's actually shrinking your world. Know the difference, protect the first, be honest about the second. The philosopher Paul Tillich wrote, "Language has created the word loneliness to express the pain of being alone, and the word solitude to express the glory of being alone. Two words, same circumstance, completely different inner experiences. If you are someone who needs time alone to feel like yourself, you are not lonely, you are not broken, you are not failing at being human. You are someone whose most essential work happens in silence. Someone whose presence with others is made richer, not poorer, by the time you spend away from them. Someone who has learned, or is still learning, that taking care of your inner world is not a luxury. It is the prerequisite for everything else. The door you close to be alone is not a wall between you and the world. It's where you go to remember who you are before you go back out into it."